James asks, conditional formatting highlighting rows based on another cell. Hello Excel community, I am creating an inventory log for work, where we list clients for our clerical unit to process fax, mail and so on. My hope was to include conditional formatting, dark highlight each row when it's completed. This verifies the case was completed based on column N that has a date populated. When a date is completed, that said row will only highlight from columns B3 to K3 down to row 601. Some occasions we may remove the date because the case needs to be reworked, so it may be removed therefore. The highlighting should be removed as well. Any assistance is greatly appreciated. So we were quite lucky as James provided the actual Excel sheet he's working in. And so as you can see, we have an overview of different tasks, and then here in column N, a date is inputted. And so what James would like to achieve is that from column K to column B, we get a highlight if the date is actually filled out. Okay, let's see how we can do this. He already guessed correctly that we are going to need conditional formatting for this. So when date is completed, we have a highlight in these rows. Now, one tricky element here is that traditional conditional formatting uses a condition from the same cell where we apply the formatting to. For example, I could highlight all cells from containing the word Tony Stark. However, that's not what we're looking to do. We're actually looking to highlight these cells based on what is inputted in another cell. And so in order to do so, we must create a new conditional formatting rule. To do so, we go to conditional formatting and then we can click new rule here. Then we get a pop-up pane with different possibilities. Now, whenever you're dealing with a case where you need to conditionally format a cell based on a condition that is situated somewhere else in your sheet, you are looking to use a formula to determine which cells to format. Now we'll click on this, and then here we can input a formula. So it says formats values where this formula is true. Now how you have to think about this, it's like writing an if formula. So instead of immediately writing it here in this formula bar, why don't we write an if formula? So in this case, I'll go a bit to the right. What we're trying to do is to check if something was filled out in column N. Now in this specific case, column N already contains a formula. So when it doesn't contain anything, really what's going on is that it contains nothing in between double quotation marks. So it's not exactly blank. So what we're looking to do is you write =, if, and then in between parentheses, we write a logical test. Now a logical test should always result in either true or false. So what we could write is if the cell N3 does not equal nothing, then we say yes. Otherwise we say no. I close the parentheses and I press enter. And now what you can see, it says yes. Why? A date was filled out. If I drag down, you can see down below here it says no. Now do keep in mind, we have used the does not equal operator. So this is a less than and a bigger than sign next to each other, and it's the same as does not equal. So in this case, if the date completed does not contain nothing, then that means something's there and we say yes, otherwise we say no. So what we now need to complete the conditional formatting is the first part of this if statement. So we need this logical test here that evaluates either to true or false. Now in our case, it's a bit tricky because the data was placed in this table. Whenever we're writing a formula for conditional formatting, it's best not to use this special notation. So instead of referencing the date completed column from this table, we will simply reference the cell N3. Okay, so let's remove this data here. Now, the first step to actually apply conditional formatting, what I always recommend is to first select the area where you want the formatting to be applied to. So what is the area where you actually want to apply a visual change to? Now, in this case, James specified that he's looking to change everything starting from column K all the way to column B. So I press Ctrl Shift to the left, and then he wants to go to the 600 row. So now I press Ctrl Shift down. And there we go. We are going to the 600 row and we've selected the entire range where we want this conditional formatting to be applied to. Now, don't worry if you are not able to select this area very neatly. It's always possible to later on manually change this, but it just makes your life quite a bit easier if you first select the area where you want the conditional formatting to be applied to. So, like mentioned earlier, we go to conditional formatting and then we click on new rule. Like I mentioned, we will be using a formula because we are going to format this region based on the contents of a cell somewhere else. Okay, like any other formula that we're ever writing, we always start with an equal sign. Then we are going to write whatever we wrote as a first argument to our if statement. So it will be a logical test that either equals true or false. And in those instances where this equals true, we will actually be formatting something. So in this case, we will be referencing cell entry. Now, it is very important that you just select cell entry and that you do not select the entire in column. That will not work. Okay, so cell entry, we are going to check that this is not empty. Now we say does not equal, so that's less than, bigger than, and then we put 2 double quotation marks there because that is how the formula was created that was put into column N actually. Now, there's one thing that we need to change. If we leave this formula as such, you can see when we clicked into cell entry, Excel automatically applied absolute referencing, meaning Excel automatically placed those dollar signs in front of the letter and the number. So sometimes this is actually what you're looking for. So this means that we will always be comparing exactly against the contents of cell N3. Now, that means if cell N3 has a date, everything will be conditionally formatted. If it does not have a date, nothing will be conditionally formatted. That is, of course, not the intended behavior. In this case, we want the shells to shift down. So for row 5, we will actually be looking into cell N5 and not into cell N3. So to accomplish that, we need to remove the absolute referencing from the row. So instead of having a dollar sign in front of the 3, we will be removing that, and that will allow the row number to shift down as our formatting also shifts down. So this is the condition that we need for the formatting. Now all that's left to do is to select the actual format we wish to apply. So we click on the format button. And so what James was looking to do was to have like a darker color to indicate that it was finished. So we will pick like some kind of gray. I will pick this color here. Of course, feel free to pick whatever you want. There are many different possibilities whenever you're doing conditional formatting. So we can have certain colors, certain patterns. You can change the border, you can change the font, make it bold, underlined, have a strike through. So many different options. Now I'll click on OK. And then once again, I click on OK again to apply the conditional formatting. There we go. As you can see, the 2 rows that have a date completed are actually highlighted. Now, if I go down below here and I write in a date, so I will write the 6th of December, 2023, enter, you can see that row automatically gets conditionally formatted. Now, one criteria was also that sometimes the date might be removed. So then we actually want to get rid of it. So to do this, I simply click delete here and you can see the conditional formatting automatically disappears. Now earlier I mentioned that if you were unable to select from the get-go the intended range where the conditional formatting needs to be applied to, it's possible to change this after the fact. So how do we do this? We go to the conditional formatting tab and then instead of clicking on new rule, we click on manage rules. Now we will get an overview of all of the rules that apply to a certain region. Now in this case, Excel has automatically shown me all the formatting rules that apply on a specific table that we're working in. But sometimes it's possible that you don't spot your rule here. So what you then need to do is to change the scope. So instead of this table, you could say, okay, let's take this entire worksheet, right? Okay, and then you have a list of all of your different conditional formatting rules. You can see mine is over here. So all we have to do is we click on it. And then over here you can see it says applies to. So here we once again can select the region where this should apply to. And so we select a new region. In our case, this is still good from B3 to K601. So we're good there. If you actually need to change your rule, then you can simply click on edit rule as such. Or in some cases, you might want to delete a rule. So then you can click it over there. If you want to duplicate a rule and then apply it to a different region or make a minimal change, that option is also available.